people in these organizations to work as hard and as many hours as possible, or at least to give the perception that they're working a lot of hours. Let me look this here so you guys can see what I got written on the board here. And we're going to talk about this concept of the law of scarcity, the need for work. You know, if we didn't need food and shelter and a whole host of other things, and have all these additional desires that we have on top of it, owning a boat, owning a Cadillac, or whatever it is, work would not have the power that it does. There would be no work. I mean, if you want to go to religious institutions, if you look at the Garden of Eden, nobody was doing any work. The story of the Bible is that people, because human beings committed a sin, they had to toil by the sweat of their brow, east of Eden, or whatever. And this concept of the family versus work conflict, that what essentially is going on is a form of a social contract where the deal is the economy provides you with a job so you can buy these things you want or need, but the deal is that you're supposed to spend basically at least a plurality, if not the majority of your time inside this work institution. And that it should be your first priority. Even though that many businesses will tell you, oh, we're family friendly, we care about family as a government. I'm telling you right now, during this election season, you're going to hear this 20 million times. Well, we believe in family. We want to support family. And yet then allow corporations to do whatever they want when it comes to family-friendly policies. Again, this is the only advanced industrialized nation that does not offer paid leave for family or medical emergencies. Whether it's the birth of a child, or whether it's a spouse dying, or whatever it is. I mean, that's where we're at in this country. If your wife or husband is dying of cancer, you are not allowed, you cannot take paid leave on.
That's family job?
Yeah.
Right now, my job, people, if you get injured on the job, you get workers' comp.
That's different. I mean, if somebody in your family got sick, like your wife's dying of cancer, your kid, instead of you being at the hospital, you're either going to have to choose to either not work or to not get paid, or to go into work and not be there for your daughter or someone who's going through chemo. To a lot of people, that's unacceptable. To people in corporations, that's the way it is. It's a rough world. People get sick, people die. What do you want to stop everything because somebody in your family died? But again, one of the aspects here is, because corporations are conscious of their public image, is that what they want people to think, how they behave or think? Is that the attitude they want to project out in public? So it leads to this nonsense that's going on in this book that we're going to talk about today, of these companies going, we believe in family-friendly policies, but then when somebody comes in to ask for time off, they're like, I don't know if we can do that for you. Is there any way we can work around this? We just... And oftentimes, and we'll talk about this as well, they'll prey on people's emotions and guilt and say, you know what, look, we just got a brand new order in from the federal government to make these things or whatever, or make these jet engines, and we really need you here because you're one of our best supervisors. They'll compliment you to death. And if that doesn't work, then they start criticizing. Well, go ahead and leave. We'll see where you're at when you come back. I mean, so, you know, people in business, and it's rightful, and it's real pressure, okay? To tell somebody they're going to lose their income and potentially everything they own is more frightening to a lot of people than jail. At least if you own your home and you go into jail and you come out after 2 years or 2 months, you still got your house. Although it's probably going to owe some property taxes, okay? You lose your job. I would venture to say to most people in this country, being homeless is worse than being in jail. For a lot of people. Although, if you've ever been to jail, you change your mind immediately. At least when you're homeless, people aren't doing things to you in the shower or trying to steal your food, or cockroaches probably have a better attitude when they crawl over you when you're homeless. Anyway, so let's watch this video. This is putting people's safety at risk. These are air traffic controllers, the people who control the traffic in the skies, not getting enough sleep.
The rate of incidents involving air traffic controllers has raised questions about their competency and professionalism. By coincidence, an old program is about to be revived that may help them do a better job. Countless times a day, air traffic controllers and pilots converse. But do they really understand what one another is saying?
Sometimes, you know, we've been told by pilots on frequency, hey, I can't do that. And, you know, we may or may not understand why they can't.
In hopes of cultivating better understanding, starting in the coming weeks, air traffic controllers will be able to fly in a cockpit to see exactly how their communications impact a working flight crew, particularly during takeoffs and landings.
It really is so valuable for air traffic controllers to see at that critical point of flight that teamwork that's happening and why we really shouldn't give them a different instruction that they're not expecting.
Rinaldi did the cockpit familiarization training before 9/11. After the terror attacks, the program was suspended because cockpit security became a paramount concern. As a result, about 1/3 of the nation's 15,000 controllers have never had the cockpit experience. The Transportation Security Administration has now given the green light to its revival, and the head of the Federal Aviation Administration is embracing it.
I was a professional airline pilot myself and had controllers on board. It gave a great understanding. It's two-way dialogue, and it helps both parties understand some of the work environment that the other is operating in.
The program is voluntary, and it doesn't cost a thing because the cockpit jump seat wouldn't ordinarily generate revenue. Controllers can sit in it for free. But the payoff, former participants say, is significant.
All right, and now that was in response to issues in between air traffic controllers and pilots. This story is more related to what we're dealing with here. It says the headlines are getting even, the headlines are glaring, even frightening air traffic controllers asleep on the job. Tune in to any news report these days. And it seems there is another report of a controller under investigation or suspending for falling asleep while they were supposed to be monitoring America's skies, from a controller found sleeping in Reno, Nevada while a medical flight was trying to land, probably with an emergency patient inside, to 2 other controllers in Lubbock, Texas, who failed to respond to radio traffic about an inbound flight. Now, not only are air traffic controllers falling asleep, but pilots are falling asleep. Both pilots. I mean, there's just 2, in some flights there's essentially 3 pilots, or 2 pilots and a navigator. And the navigator can actually, or at least somewhat trained in flying a plane. At least 9 fatigue-related incidents have been reported since mid-February, prompting everyone from lawmakers to the general public Never mind, just please sit down. To the general public to ask why controllers are so tired and what can be done to solve the problem in air traffic control towers. The answer is one federal aviation and safety officials have been grappling with for 3 decades, and the National Transportation Safety Board is expected to take up the issue Monday during a media roundtable where it is scheduled to discuss recommendations to combat fatigue. It's been known for 30 years. The same studies have been repeated and repeated. Everybody knows what the answer is. Everybody knows what the common practice has been, said Bill Voss, president of the nonprofit Flight Safety Foundation in Alexandria, Virginia. Former air traffic controller Bob Richards, who wrote Secrets from the Tower, said the reports of controllers sleeping on the job are nothing new. I think inside the profession everybody knows this goes on, he told CNN recently. The issue goes beyond job performance. Air traffic controller fatigue has been attributed as a factor over the years in a number of accidents, including near misses and runway collisions. The NTSB has made more than 80 recommendations aimed at reducing controller stress and fatigue since '81, the year that then-President Reagan fired thousands of ununionized air traffic controllers for illegally going on strike. Most, according to NTSB records reviewed by CNN, have not been adopted. As late as 2007, following the investigation in 2006 crash of Comair Flight 5191 that killed 49 people, the NTSB recommended increasing the number of breaks given to air traffic controllers, offering fatigue awareness training, and making changes to controller schedules. The NTSB was unable to determine whether fatigue contributed to the Comair accident. The blame game among lawmakers and federal aviation officials escalated this month as more fatigue-related incidents came to light, culminating April 14th with the resignation of Kurt Krakowski, the official in charge of operating the air traffic control system. Transportation Secretary Ray LaHood has ordered a top-down review of controller duties and scheduling practices, and the Federal Aviation Administration's Randy Babbitt has already announced, and that was the guy that was talking, staffing increases from 1 controller to 2 at towers open 24 hours, like the ones at LaGuardia and JFK. Additionally, the FAA has increased time off between shifts from 8 to 9 hours and has banned the long-standing practice of working a midnight shift after a weekend. to arrange a 3-day weekend. But the National Air Traffic Controllers Association, which represents 20,000 controllers, engineers, and other safety-related professionals in the United States, said the steps don't go far enough. The union's president, Paul Rinaldi, who wrapped up a listening tour earlier this month with Babbitt, where they heard controllers' concerns and reinforced that sleeping on the job would not be tolerated, said for years that the union has lobbied the FAA and Congress to address controller fatigue before it's too late. We support the FAA's recent action to eliminate simple staffing on the midnight shift. These changes, however, barely scratch the surface of the problem, he said in a statement Friday. But Representative John Mica, chairman of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, has criticized the FAA's decision to add more controllers to towers. Only in the federal government would you double up on workers averaging $161,000 per year in salary and benefits that aren't doing their job, said Mike, a Republican of Florida. This increase in staffing, when there is little to no traffic, also misdirects our resources and focus away from congestion air traffic control facilities. There are currently 15,475 air traffic controllers, many of them newly hired to replace a wave of expected retirements in the next few years. The FAA has a mandatory retirement age of 56 for those who manage air traffic, and many of those expected to retire were hired after Ronald Reagan fired striking controllers. There is a lack of professionalism that seems to have taken hold in the controller workforce, said Voss, who also worked as an air traffic controller. Some of these events were embarrassing personal behavior issues. These issues need to be dealt with immediately with disciplinary action. There's no debate about it. I would assume it's probably worse than falling asleep. Either having people up in the towers or maybe drinking while they're on the job, those types of things. Maybe sexual issues, people having sex at a tower. You never know. But he also said that such issues need to be separated from honest mistakes, such as the recent aborted landing of a plane carrying First Lady Michelle Obama. The FAA said in an air traffic, you bet somebody probably got fired for that. The FAA said an air traffic controller mistake was behind the incident, which resulted in the First Lady's plane coming too close to a military aircraft ahead of it. That would have been a real good incident, wouldn't it? That would have looked real good. The First Lady of the United States gets killed because some jackass made a mistake. You know, this isn't somebody messing up your hamburger order at McDonald's here. You know, that would have been, could you imagine that? And I hate to put it this way, but Obama as a widower would have won by a landslide in a re-election, don't you think? The sympathy vote alone would have been enough. So, maybe he was planning it. Anyway. It was a relatively small and understandable mistake that should not have resulted in any retribution against the controller whatsoever. I don't think so. I mean, you really think that that's what happened, that nobody was disciplined for this? Are you kidding me? Pete Burgess, and maybe even the First Lady was like, it happened, and don't let it happen again. But the other person was like, you're gonna have to be fired. Anyway, an aviation analyst who worked as a controller and a supervisor for more than 30 years said controllers have to take personal accountability for their actions. If they are not getting enough sleep, they have to ask themselves why. He said, did they end up staying up because they were doing work around the house? I love that. Yeah, I'm always up at 2 o'clock in the morning vacuuming. Burgess, who runs Burgess Aviation Consultants in Fort Worth, Texas, said that rather than spending a lot of money to conduct studies and hire more controllers, the FAA should consider taking more sensible steps, such as having controllers working the overnight shifts to make regularly scheduled radio broadcasts. It sounds archaic, Burgess says, but it doesn't cost money. All of this, though, poses a question whether it is safe to fly America's skies. The answer depends on who you ask. The reports of sleeping air traffic controllers haven't scared off David Hopkins, 49, who flies about once a week for work. But Hopkins of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, says he's noticed a lot of talk about it among passengers at airports and on airplanes. If a plane is late taking off or doesn't land as scheduled, you hear people make jokes. They say things like, I hope they aren't sleeping, said Hopkins, who works for a pipeline construction company. Hopkins, who has logged tens of thousands of air miles this year, said he believes the controllers are doing their job. He said last week that he was on a plane preparing to land at Pittsburgh when the pilot announced that an air traffic controller had ordered the plane to circle back around because it would have been too close to another inbound flight. That tells me they are still in the towers and they are still functioning. Maybe he fell asleep and the guy was covering for this other guy. But for 23-year-old LaShonda Benson of Atlanta who flies infrequently, the reports are worrisome. It only takes one mistake, right? Said Benson, who works as a restaurant hostess. This is what I tell people who ride their bikes on the side of the road. Oh, I've been doing it for 20 years. I've never been hit once. It only takes once to get run over by a car. So I'd say the same thing about bars. Oh, I've never gotten in a fight at a bar or had somebody threaten. It only takes once when someone pulls a gun out, and then it turns into a Pac-Man Jones incident in Las Vegas or something. So anyway, or worse, maybe not. Well, the Pac-Man Jones was worse, but for Plaxico, his little stupid thing was worse. Anyway, and while she said she wouldn't cancel a trip because of the recent reports, Benson, who described herself as a nervous flyer, said she wouldn't be at ease until her feet were on the ground. Burgess, however, said the numbers speak for themselves. When you look at the millions and millions and millions of air miles logged every year, it's a lot safer than being on the freeway. There's no doubt about that. But the difference is, a lot of accidents don't end in fatalities. I don't know what the percentage of car accidents is, but I would say it's less than 50% of car accidents. It's probably a lot more than that. It's probably more like 75% of all car accidents do not end up in a fatality. The percentage for airline accidents is probably 85% when an accident happens. That's the fatality rate. And the people who survive probably don't look too good. I'd rather not survive an airline accident. It can't be good. You're talking missing limbs, fingers, paralyzation, broken bones, broken neck, broken back. Okay? How many of you have ever met somebody who survived an airline accident? I said one person. What did the person look like?
Oh, those one of the little ones. I don't know.
We're like I'm talking a wreck where the plane breaks up into pieces. Not something where it hits the runway and a wing comes off or something. That's more of an incident than an accident.
You can walk around and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, even that thing, the Miracle on the Hudson, that was not an accident. That was not a wreck. It was not an airplane wreck. It was just a water landing. So, and again, I'll repeat to the airline industry, I don't want a flotation device. I want a parachute. Quit putting flotation devices under my seat. I'm not interested in you feeding the sharks after we're dead. Because that's all that does. Fine, you can find my body. Okay? Have you ever met anybody who survived a water landing besides that Miracle on the Hudson? It's not happening. Okay? And there's the difference. And the other thing is, if both the engines go down on an airplane, you're dead. You're dead, basically, unless the pilot's real clever. If your tire blows out on an empty road somewhere, are you dead? No. You might be hurt. You might just be mad. You might not have a spare. Maybe you ran into somebody when your tire blew out, so now you're mad on top of that. But again, But they are right that it's safer as far as just sheer fatalities, but maybe not percentage-wise. All right. All right. So that was the wrong video that I showed you there. This is the right video. Should be.
What happened in Reno? Well, this happened early yesterday. The flight was coming into Reno from Mammoth Lakes, California, with a critically ill passenger. The pilot tried to reach the tower not once,
so someone's life is on the line here.
The controller slept through it all. Here's part of the pilot's conversation with a regional controller.
Yeah, for you. You weren't able to get hold of the tower? No. Okay, we're going to call him on the phone line. Alright, we'll circle for him. Okay. We got 368 if we make this have to land. We'll wait for it on.
And they did. An official says the delay did not hurt the patient. The Secretary of Transportation calls the episode inexcusable, but he might wish he had used different words.
I guarantee the flying public, we will not sleep until we can guarantee
some more workaholics on the
good
job.
Safety in the control towers when these planes are coming in and out of airports.
And the Federal Aviation Administration, Christine, immediately made changes, putting 2 controllers in 27 towers that had been staffed with only 1 on overnight shifts. But Congressman John Mica was harshly critical, saying only in the federal government would you double up on workers averaging $161,000 per year in salary and benefits that are not doing their job.
It's nothing compared to what people on Wall Street make, and they don't do anything related to people's safety.
$161,000 babysitter in with them, that's kind of a problem.
A lot of people work the night shift, and the understanding is if you work the night shift, you have to stay awake for your job.
Right. But we know about the incidents also, Gene, at Reagan National, in Knoxville and in Reno. I mean, can we assume there are others?
Yeah, we can. The FAA disclosed that there were 2 additional controller screw-ups in recent weeks. A controller in Seattle fell asleep during his morning shift on April 11th. He is currently suspended. And 2 controllers in Lubbock, Texas are on suspension for failing to hand off control of a departing aircraft on March 29th, and also for being late taking control of an inbound aircraft. So the number of these incidents keeps going up.
And again, pilots have been caught sleeping too. And if you see quickly, I'm not going to read this whole story, but I want to show you this. This is what their lives are like here. This is somewhat of a shorter story. We'll start here. It says here, let's talk about FAA, the air traffic controller schedule. So the schedules can be tough too. Controllers typically work 5 8-hour shifts per week. Yeah, according to the FAA, shifts vary, but the thing what they're trying to say is that this is intense work, you know, to some extent, you know. But anyway, shifts vary. It might include a couple of day shifts followed by a swing shift and a night shift. So maybe this isn't necessarily workaholism, but certainly this culture of if you're dedicated to your job, you'll come in no matter what the shift is, whether it disrupts your sleep schedule or whatever. Anyway, controllers used to be required to have at least 8 hours of rest between shifts, but the government raised that minimum to 9 hours on April 17th. Many facilities are closed at night, but 22% of the workforce did at least one shift that encompassed midnight in 2010, the agency said. The exact schedule depends on the airport, but Richard said a typical work week begins with 2 days on an evening shift, likely 3 to 11, immediately followed by 2 days on a morning shift. Can you see the issue there? I mean, 2 days they're working until 11 p.m. and then the next day they got to get up at 5 or 6 in the morning to go into work. And then a controller then will typically have to come back just hours later to finish the week with one overnight shift, likely from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. It's done this way so that controllers can deal with both busy and slow air traffic periods. Obviously, no concern for their sleep schedule or for their family schedule. Richard said, morning and evenings tend to be the busiest as people depart for and return from business trips. Maybe the airlines need to change when they have planes come in and out. Now, part of it has to do with business schedules and things like that. The reason why a lot of planes leave at 5 in the morning is so somebody can get to Denver by 8 or 9 and then go to a business meeting at 11. That's one of the reasons why they do that, or overnight flights to Europe. Because I think partly why they do overnight flights is because I'm sure airlines don't like 400 people complaining all at the same time about how much the air stinks and how bad the food is and how uncomfortable the chairs are and how loud the 15 babies are on and on. I can't stand air travel. I'm not, unless I had to, I'm not flying as far as I'm concerned ever again. I mean, it's a nightmare. People have said things like, well, why don't we just all work straight day shifts or straight night shifts, but you end up then not distributing the workload? So this is part of like work fairness. You have some people who are working all the heavy traffic all the time and other people working hardly any traffic, and that doesn't make for good controllers in terms of keeping up the proficiency. But the turnaround times for such shifts can be brutal. Connolly remembers sometimes having just 8 or 9 hours between time one shift ended and another one started. And look, you can't just go to sleep immediately. Right? You got to go eat, you got family duties. There's the issue. If you've got a family, this becomes a serious, serious problem. You can't just sleep whenever you want to. You know? And on top of that, you can bet that some of these people are taking things like Ambien. Which, no, that doesn't cause any issues, does it? Ambien's not addictive or it doesn't kill people. Yeah, it didn't kill Heath Ledger, did it? That's exactly what he was on. That's what he started on doing. And then he moved his way up to OxyContin. And again, the lesson is don't hang out with the Olsen twins. Ambien is a drug that's sold by drug dealers posing as a pharmaceutical company to get people to go to sleep. It's a sleeping pill. And I'm sure it works for some people, but what they don't tell, I mean, I'm sure it's a savior for some people, but what they don't tell people is that people that have normal sleep schedules shouldn't be taking it, and that it is addictive. It's highly addictive, and it leads to other drugs. And it's one of the biggest. To me, it's one of the. It is a gateway drug. I mean, you heard that term, like marijuana is a gateway drug. It is a gateway drug to other things like OxyContin, which then OxyContin is just heroin. So it's a gateway drug for essentially a pill form of heroin. And again, a lot of these medications are used responsibly for a lot of people, but I think that doctors on some levels are not as open and clear about the side effects of the medication and also their addictive capacity. They'll say stuff like, maybe habit forming. And then that way, if they say that, they're not legally liable when somebody becomes an addict. And I don't perceive Heath Ledger as being a complete idiot. So obviously he didn't know what these things completely were, or again, maybe it's the Hollywood lifestyle. Again, I would say, don't hang out with the Olsen twins. It doesn't turn out well. They're vampires. They should hang out with Macaulay Culkin and all the rest of these vampires or something like that. Anyway, Macaulay's weirder than they are. So, and which makes me think Mila Kunis is even weirder. Because she dated Macaulay Culkin for 8 years. Anyway, just don't take Ambien unless you absolutely, that would be my advice. Like from a layman's perspective. Unless you absolutely need it and nothing, because look, you can do, chamomile tea helps you sleep. Valerian root, which is what they use to make Valium, helps you sleep. There are other, drinking warm milk. And if those things don't work, then maybe you need to go to the doctor or something. But I would say sleep issues are usually caused by stress. So if you don't get rid of the stress, you're just taking dope. Which is, I'm telling you, I hate to put it that way, but this is what this stuff is. It's a narcotic, and you're taking a narcotic, and you're not reducing the stress. So not only are you still stressed, but now you're on a narcotic. Which eventually, when you become addicted, now you're going to have more stress, because now you're stressed from your life, and you're stressed from your addiction. And then eventually, your doctor's going to stop giving it to you. So now you're going to have to go doctor shopping, like Rush Limbaugh. Or Elvis. Anyway. But to turn around, blah, blah, the transition from day to night shift, which is at his airport, ended at 2 p.m. to overnight, which began at 11 that evening, was particularly difficult. Many times I just couldn't go to sleep. Here it is, I've gotten off at 2 o'clock, it's broad daylight, the family is active, they're asking me things that need to get done, Conley said. Research shows that air traffic controllers get an average of 2.3 hours of sleep before an overnight shift. It's almost better not to even go to sleep. If you've ever had like 2 to 3 hours of sleep, it makes you a lot more tired than if you would have gotten no sleep. It feels terrible. And if you look at the science of sleep, you don't get into the REM cycle. Your body, when you're sleeping, reduces hormone releases hormones that heal your body. Like if you go work out or have a tough day at work, you notice the next day your body feels like it's repaired itself. You may still be sore, but your body at night repairs itself. Okay, that's why you feel refreshed when you have a good day of sleep. It prepares your hormones and prepares your the energy and metabolism in your blood and stuff that gives you the energy to go throughout the day. If you only sleep 2 to 3 hours a night, you're actually making yourself sick. You ask any physician, irregular sleep patterns or lack of sleep will kill you quicker than almost anything. It'll age you quicker than anything. It will cause heart disease. It will cause obesity. Okay. It will cause all kinds of issues. All right, neurotic tics, all this stuff. Okay, ulcers, all kinds of stuff. I'm telling you. All right? Anyway, they actually did a study on people who fly a lot for jobs and suffer from jet lag, and their life expectancy drops 5 to 6 years because of it. Anyway, once Conley began the shift, it was hard not to get drowsy. It's probably nice and warm in there, right? They get real comfortable. The windows are tinted, and probably playing some like meditation music in the background, or one of those. You've seen these little things that people have their fountains with the little wheel on it, and they have the fog coming from it. Those are things that are supposed to help you sleep. For most people, it just makes money to go to the bathroom. Anyway, it's unnatural for humans to be nocturnal. Experts say humans are wired to sleep at night by their circadian rhythm, a 24-hour cycle that brings about physical, mental, and behavioral changes to the body. Whoever said this needs to come study me, because I would prefer to stay up till 3 or 4 in the morning and wake up at noon. So, and I don't go out, and I'm not one of these people, like some people who do this, they go out to bars and they party and that's their thing. That's not my interest. I actually get more work done at 2 or 3 in the morning. It's just my natural sleep rhythm, so I don't know. Maybe this is for average person. Maybe I'm just an oddball. Anyway, the circadian rhythm affects sleep cycles, hormone releases, body temperature, and various processes. You can get sick with the flu. It lowers your immune system not to get proper sleep. All shift workers get sleepy, said Jean Geiger Brown, an associate professor at the University of Maryland School of Nursing who researches shift work and sleep. 20% of workers doze off during the night shift. People aren't machines. The biggest issue is not air traffic controllers falling asleep, but working while impaired by fatigue, said Bill Voss, president and CEO of the nonprofit Flight Safety Foundation. If a pilot says he's too tired to fly, for example, he's allowed to decline the flight without being punished, Voss said, but there's no provision for an air traffic controller to call in fatigued. That's actually illegal, and they have to be punished. So in one way, you are forcing people to work even if they can't, Voss said. Meanwhile, air traffic controller staffing continues to be under extreme scrutiny. The FAA said Randy Babbitt, the agency's administration and National Air Traffic Controllers Association president Paul Rinaldi have launched a nationwide call to action on air traffic control safety and professionalism and are visiting air traffic facilities to underscore these points. So that's specifically to one industry, and that's going on in a lot of industries. Truck drivers are under similar pressure. I think Wall Street brokers and bankers feel that they're under similar pressure. They're under pressure not only from their bosses, but from other employees as well. And what it brings us to is this concept of the law of scarcity, this idea that there are limited resources in this world. We talked about this, very much the conflict perspective, and that because there's limited resources, and yet there seems to be unlimited demands upon these resources, there needs to be a prioritization or sort of a ranking or an ordering of these priorities. And for most people when they're young, this is less of an issue. When they're unmarried and they don't have a family, this becomes much more of an issue, obviously, when people start to head into their late 20s and early 30s, or even if they're younger and they have a family then. When you're younger, and remember we talked about the time-bind stuff, men are viewed by corporations as being having less drag on them than women. Because for most men, even in this society today, obviously men don't carry the children, so there's one element right there. But in general, even though a lot of men profess that they would like to be parents at some point, like to be fathers at one point, although as soon as they become fathers, most of them run away, like half of them leave. Anyway, but men are much less obsessed with having children than women are. And part of this has been explained by genetics. I don't know if that's really the case. Frankly, it's more of a socially constructed reality. Women are taught that part of their value of their life, their existence, is tied up in how many children they have, or the quality of their children, or who they're married to. Whereas men are judged basically almost entirely upon their professional ability. No one says Michael Jordan's a bad father, even though he is. No one gets on Tom Brady's case. But if Michelle Obama didn't pay attention to her kids, imagine what they would say. Right? Or Hillary Clinton. She'd have been a bad mother when she was the first lady. So women get a much larger amount of family-based reality lumped on them. So when a woman goes, a 24-year-old woman goes to a job interview for like a very high-pressure job where she's going to have to spend a lot of time at work and away from the family, and a male is there interviewing for the same job and they have similar credentials, who do you think that the person is, even if an interviewer is a woman, who do you think is going to get the job? If that's the focus of the company, right? And both individuals and companies and the society at large, we do this every day. We rank and order things in our lives and prioritize things. And one of the strangest realities, or maybe it's very common though, is this idea that people don't want to admit to their priorities. If you ask the average American, they'll tell you, what institution do you think they prioritize at the number one spot, even though it's a complete and utter lie? What do you think they put at the top? It's mostly so they can look good and feel good about themselves. What do you think they put at the top? Huh?
They put their family first.
Yeah, they say, "Oh, I do everything for my family," and they'll tell you this too. If you throw it back in their face, if you throw it back in their face and be like, wait, you say you care about your family, you spend 60 hours at work, what would they tell you?
They're working for them.
That's right. I'm working so my family can have more. But if you actually read in chapters 3 and 4, is that what's really going on? Yeah, right? You see this Listen, this is on, I think, page 80. Wait, 35. This is a good, I think this is a good part, and we'll talk about this survey data here. So at the beginning of chapter 4, in the chapter called Family Values in Reverse Worlds, it says here, so this challenges this idea that Americans say that they care about family, but in reality, what do they do either when they have the opportunity to spend time with their family or versus work? So it says right here on page 35, if working parents are deciding to work full-time and longer, what experiences at home and work might be influencing them to do so? Because it's clearly not their stated goal. Now, again, we know one of the issues with human behavior is that people are dishonest in this sense. That they say one thing out in public because they want to be perceived as good people. You want to be perceived as somebody out of the ordinary. Even though it's good to be unique, it's not good to be a freak, or a weirdo, or a shill, or a jerk, or an insensitive person. So people will say, oh yeah, and this comes from many things. So people say, oh yeah, I support women's rights, when in reality they don't. Or they say, yeah, I support diversity, and they do everything they can to destroy it. Those are more conscious, deliberate lies. The more pernicious lies, the harder lies to get rid of are the ones where the person's in denial. Oh, I don't have a drinking problem. But like, you're drinking right now. Oh, but it's not a problem. Right? Or I put my family ahead of everybody, but as soon as they get a chance to leave, they, or go to work or something like that, it's gone. Right? Or we value education, but you just voted against a bond issue. Right? And you don't go to PTA meetings. Oh, we care about democracy, but nobody ever votes. Those types of things are hard to get rid of because what you have to do is you have to break down the wall of denial that people are living in. Because they're comfortable with the fact of just saying, I support family and education, and yet do nothing about it, because no one ever calls them out on it. And since a lot of people do this stuff, there's no real social movement to stop people from lying. So listen to this. So Arlie's explaining what she was looking for when she first did the book. She said, when I first began the research for this book, I assumed that home was home and work was work. That each was a stationary rock between, beneath the moving feet of working parents. I assumed as well that each stood in distinct opposition to each other, so that they were in conflict with each other. In a family, love and commitment loom large as ends in themselves and are not means to any further end. As an Erico parent put it, I work to live, I don't live to work. You hear within that the prioritization? However difficult family life may be at times, we usually feel family ties offer an irreplaceable connection to generations past and future. Family is our personal embrace with history, suggesting that in American cultural ideals and ideology, that to profess anything but complete love and dedication to your family is some form of degeneracy. No matter how bad your family life is, that to say you hate your family is the worst thing in the world. Or that you enjoy being, even if it's not that bad, you enjoy being at work better with your family. And at the risk of people considering me to be degenerate, I've never had a time when I hung around my family where I felt comfortable and secure and safe. To me, and maybe I'm the only one who doesn't live in denial about this, family is one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. Family is where you get the potential to be abused, to be taught the wrong lessons, to be ignored, to be harmed, to not live up to the ideals. Families aren't perfect. People aren't perfect. Parents don't know as much as they think they do. And the difference is, when major mistakes are made in childhood development, what does that usually translate into later on in life? Both for the individual and for society. Does that turn out well? No. Horrible things happen. Charles Manson had a messed up childhood. Adolf Hitler had a messed up childhood. It is certainly one of the major reasons why they did what they did. People from normal households don't go and kill 65 million people and put people in concentration camps and stuff. Name me a normal person who did something like that. You know? I'd like to see what kind of a childhood Bernie Madoff had. That would be curious to me. Now, family is also, I have to say, that I do have a lot of family that I care about and are supportive, but they pale in comparison to the family that is damaging. And frankly, I think when I was 18, the only thing in the world I wanted to be away from my family so badly I moved to Alaska, where I knew they couldn't come there. I knew they wouldn't, too. That wasn't the only reason why I went there, but it was one of the biggest reasons. And to me, and again, this is the risk of sounding like a degenerate, friends have always meant more to me than family. You're stuck with family. So if they're degenerate drunks, that's just who they are, and you have to deal with them, right? So anyway, and again, I know most people don't experience family the way I do, but I assure you there's moments where you look at your family like, I'm sorry, I'm related to you. How? I mean, it's pretty bad when you have to admonish your family members for being, deviant or expressing some unbelievable sentiments. Right? And again, because racism is not taught in society anymore, where do people learn racism? Where do they learn sexism? Where do they learn intolerance? Where do they learn violence? It's in the family. They don't learn these things on the street anymore. Some people do. If you don't have a family, like at a street gang or something like that. Anyway. So again, there's this idea that family is sort of the safe place where you can get love and acceptance, and people should be kind to you, and it's like to me it reminds me of like a sitcom like the Cosby Show. That's the way family should be. People should be supportive. The mom and dad should be at home. Everybody should have enough money and resources. Nobody should worry about being starving to death, or any conflict is frivolous. It's over. Rudy used my comb on her hair or something. I mean, that's the argument. It's not, I'm going to kill my brother because he said I was worthless. That kind of stuff, which goes on constantly. Anyway. And again, I'll tell you, a lot of murders are family on family. A lot. Too many. Too many to explain it away. Too many to explain it away as these are just bad families. Okay? Intimacy, close attention, close quarters with people breeds either one of two things. It breeds closeness or it breeds hatred. I think that was the mistake that a lot of people in the 60s made. They thought that if we just put a bunch of different people in a room, they'd all get along. And it actually reinforced a lot of racial stereotypes and gender stereotypes. When you had women working in the workplace next to men, it actually didn't make the men less likely to be intolerant. It made them more likely. And you'll see this in this book. We'll talk about the gender aspects of the organizational culture. Anyway, however difficult family life may be at times, we usually feel family ties offer an irreplaceable connection to generations past and future. Again, that family is very important to people. Jobs, on the other hand, are supposed to be sort of the horror show. This is where you go to be a slave, to be beaten, and get a handful of nickels or maybe pennies for your work, where you're underappreciated, where you're just a number, where the conditions are horrible, right? That's the work world. For some people, at least. Or that was certainly in the past. Jobs, on the other hand, earn money that to most of us serves as a means to other ends. So job is that we work so we can have other things. Or the work world should not be your primary identity. But for a lot of people, isn't their work, isn't their job their primary identity? Lawyers don't go around calling themselves family men. Or family women. I'm a lawyer. Right? The president doesn't introduce himself to the president of China going, yeah, I'm a family man, and then secondarily, I'm the president of the United States. Right? Seriously. To be sure, jobs can also allow us to develop skills or friendships, so the workplace can act like a surrogate family, can't it? And you can meet best friends and even maybe a wife or a husband, right? And some people intermarry within jobs and become like your boss. Like, isn't one of the Giants players married to Tom Coughlin's daughter?
Yeah.
That's got to be weird, because they're going to cut that guy eventually. I mean, they might not. He's a good player. Who does anybody know who it is? Is it Snead? Snead, yeah. Again, but it's got to be weird, right? And you almost wonder, how did that happen? How did a player start dating the coach's daughter? Because that ain't going on my team. If I'm the coach, you're not dating some. I mean, but again, that's normally not allowed in business places, but that can happen. So not only, and it's got to be a little bit weird for the other players that the coach is this guy's father-in-law, and he goes over to his house on holidays, and he has unprecedented access to to the coach. But this is the way business works. That there is an intersecting points between business, family, and friends. That these are not separate entities, are they? On a lot of levels. Work can be like family. Family can be like work. Friends can be like work. Friends can be like family. You can have friends at work. You can have family at work. Okay? You can have friends that you consider to be family. A whole bunch of other stuff. So these things are not as clear cut, are they? Like I got cousins that are basically brothers to me. And I've got friends that are basically family too. And I would say most people are probably like that. And maybe it's friends you met at work. I know the closest friends in the world to you. Right? Marrying at work sometimes turns out badly. There's the other thing. With the divorce rate high, what's going to be worse? He's married to her now, or if they got a divorce? And it was messy. I mean, if you're Coughlin, you want to coach this dude and like called your wife or called your daughter a bunch of names? Fill in the blank? Okay. But we seldom envision the workplace as somewhere workers would freely choose to spend their time. If in the American imagination the family has a touch of the sacred, the realm of work seems profane. It seems like it's the enemy, right? It pulls you away from your family, makes you do things you don't want to do for long amounts of time so you can get a handful of nickels. It's not that way if you make $20 million though, right? Or something like that. That's a pretty good job. I'll tell you what, I would love to do a survey about, for $20 million a year, I would do the following jobs. I would love to see Americans answer that question. Because I guarantee you that cleaning out sewers with your tongue would be on a lot of people's lists. Stuff like that. I mean, I know there's a certain select percentage, small percentage, about 1% of the American people that would probably wipe other people's asses for $20 million a year or something like that. I mean, they would probably clean up herpes sores off of like the floors of like porno booths or something disgusting. I mean, there's some sick crap that people would do. Okay. Lick the inside of a subway car or something like that. Anyway. Starting on page 36, though, continuing. In addition, I assumed, as many of us do, that compared to the workplace, home is a more pleasant place to be. Oh, really? We'll see about that. This is, after all, one reason why employers pay workers to work, and don't pay them to stay home. The very word work suggests, to most of us, something unpleasant, involuntary, even coerced. Some people, work has a much different meaning, and here's where she gets to this point. If the purpose and nature of family and work differ so drastically in our minds, it seemed reasonable to assume that people's emotional experiences of the two worlds would differ profoundly too. What she's trying to say here is that people would like to be at home and have positive feelings attached to the home, and that people would conversely view work world in a negative light and try to avoid it at all costs. Right? And try to do as little amount at work as possible or get the most amount of work done so they can go home early. That type of stuff. But they wouldn't do overtime unless they were absolutely forced to. In Haven in the Heartless World, the social historian Christopher Latch drew a picture of family as a haven where workers sought refuge from the cruel world of work. Painting in broad strokes, we might imagine a picture like this. At the end of a long day, a weary worker opens his front door and calls out, "Hi, honey, I'm home." He takes off his uniform, puts on a bathrobe, opens a beer, picks up the paper, and exhales. It sounds like an alcoholic and a sexist. Whatever its strains, home is where he's relaxed most himself. Not if you got to clean the house yourself and cook your own food. I mean, this is an unrealistic image of home life, isn't it? And what about this woman who has to wait, she's waiting in bated breath for her dorky husband to come home and flop his lazy ass down on the couch and go, "What's for dinner?" And get me a beer while you're at it. And then some of my friends are going to come over, so go to the store and buy some snacks. This is unrealistic. I'm not even sure this existed in the 50s. When the 50s were a weird time, okay? So anybody who tells you the 50s were normal is being stupid. At home, he feels that people people know him, understand him, appreciate him for who he really is, even if he's a woman. At home, he is safe, or she. At work, our workers on call, ready to report at a moment's notice, working flat out to get back to the customer right away. He feels like a number. If he doesn't watch out, he can take the fall for someone else's mistakes. This, then, in Lotch's heartless world, is Lotch's heartless world, an image best captured long ago in Charlie Chaplin's satirical Modern Times. In that film, Charlie acts the part of a hapless factory hand on an automated assembly line moving so fast that when he takes a moment to scratch his nose, he falls desperately behind, dwarfed by the inhuman scale of the workplace, pressured by the line's relentless pace. Charlie quickly loses his humanity, goes mad, climbs into the giant machine that runs the conveyor belt, and becomes part of the machine himself. Now, what has changed in the work world from the 19-teens till now that makes it less likely that the work world is this place of horror show that they're describing with this Charlie Chaplin stuff? Or if you've ever read the book by Upton Sinclair, The Jungle. What has changed from the 1890s to now in the workplace, even in factories?
Laws.
Huh?
Laws.
What kind of laws? Safety laws. What else?
Child labor.
Right. All kinds of things. To where the workplace is a much more pleasant thing. Beforehand, how was most assembly line work done? And what's it done now? By machines and robots. Or in people in China. Is it a horrible workplace to work in an office building? In the summer, what's it like? Well, not if they have air conditioning. If they don't have air conditioning, I suggest not work there. But I would say more people go to a workplace that's air conditioning than have air conditioners in their home. Think about it. You can't run a business. I'm not going to any insurance company's office if it's sweltering hot. I think, what's wrong with these people? Are they stupid? And I'm not going, could you imagine if restaurants didn't have air conditioning? How hot it would be in the late summer? Or Florida or something like that? Some of them they don't have air conditioning in the kitchen. So they don't care about their workers. And obviously they don't care about large amounts of drops of sweat getting in food before it goes into the oven. They're obviously not concerned about that either. Some places don't even have hair nets. But let's face it, the work world has gotten to be a much better, it's not perfect by any means, right? But it is certainly a better place, isn't it? Now, there are still terrible jobs. Walmart, fast food restaurants, stuff like that, right? And if you've ever had these jobs, you have to wring the sweat out of your socks when you come home at night. Or your feet are just swelled up because you were standing all day long. And I can't deal with the public like on that level. I just don't care that much about your stupid cheeseburger to give a damn. I just don't. And I'm not going to take abuse from somebody. I'll jump over the counter on somebody. Don't get in my face about some stupid $1 hamburger or cheeseburger that the manager just gave to you for free. You got your free food, now go away. Quit talking. You know, and those of you who've never worked at a fast food restaurant, or you go to fast food restaurants, you do this, you're like, big deal, man, just deal with it, suck it up. Forget you. Work 5 minutes in one of these jobs. Tell me how you feel. Do you really think getting upset about chicken nuggets is worth getting killed over or getting your ass beat over? Because I'm telling you right now, McDonald's employees, they got nothing to lose. You think I can't go get a stupid job at Wendy's after I lose my job at McDonald's? After I beat someone down because they called me a name because their hamburger was wrong? So be careful next time you go to McDonald's about running your mouth to the employees. I'm telling you right now. Luckily, I was never angry enough person to do that type of stuff. But when I look back on the experience, I don't have pleasant memories. People are rude.
I work at a restaurant, and I work at a pizza place, and on Wednesday and Thursday, I'm the only person behind the counter.
So it's a nightmare.
Yeah, and the guys are meaner too. They're like, oh, a girl's handling pizza, and then they're like, oh, I hope you didn't make it.
Right, and everybody always wants their whatever they're doing, whatever their stupid stuff is, it's way more important than everybody else's, including yours. So cash my check out first. And I understand the customer side of it, no doubt about it. I do, because I've been frustrated waiting at a counter. But because I've worked these jobs, I'm usually a little more patient, and I'm not a patient person in general. But I would say to people, I would say to your bosses, they're doing you a disservice by putting you there. And the reason why they're doing it is because they're trying to save money. Because labor in a service industry like a restaurant, labor can sometimes be 60% of the overhead cost. Yes?
I work at a fitness center. I'm a cook in the back of the kitchen and stuff.
They have a kitchen and a fitness center?
Yeah, it's a whole cafe kind of thing. And all these people pay like a good amount of money to go there, so they expect everything to be perfect all the time. So if they see one of the girls working in the back at the stove or something, they freak out because they think like the hair's gonna get in it, or they freak out because the order's gonna get messed up.
Right.
But in fact, half the guys mess up the order anyway. So.
And I would assume that people who are obsessed with their health are probably very obsessed with their food. So it's very particular. Yeah. I would just say to people in general, be aware that these are some of the worst jobs in the United States. People, they're not happy. They're not at these jobs because they're, because they want to be. And many people are trying. They're working 2 jobs. So this isn't the only job, and they've heard this at Subway, and then they come to Wendy's and they hear it. Or Walmart. The only good thing about Walmart is that, for the most part, and you've seen the people who work there, like it looks like at Walmart you could like get away with just wandering around the store for about an hour. Whereas McDonald's, sometimes there's like broad swaths of time where no one comes in. And then all of a sudden 400 people show up, or a tour bus or something like that. And I'm not sure people understand the physics of making food. You can't, unless you want your hamburger frozen, sit down, calm down, and it'll be up. Otherwise, go to another restaurant where it'll take 45 minutes to get your food. That's your choices. So, anyway. It's just such images of home and work that were challenged in one of my first interviews in Amerco. So she's saying, well, she thought she'd find this in Amerco, that people would hate being at work and they would resent work and they'd rather be with their family. So here's the conflict. So she interviews this woman named Linda Avery. Friendly 38-year-old mother of 2 daughters, is a shift supervisor at the Dimco plant 10 miles down the valley from Amerco headquarters. Now she does have a husband. Her husband Bill is a technician in the same plant. So their family life is sort of tied up into the company a little bit. So their work is sort of family here, but they work at different plants. And that's probably done on purpose. You don't want people of the same background. Mainly because you don't want favoritism to go on, but you also, if a divorce takes place, you don't want these 2 people. I don't want my business to be impacted by somebody's divorce proceedings, and that's exactly what happens when you get spouses that work in the same division, and now they're starting to fight with each other. It reminds me of Fleetwood Mac when Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks broke up, and Lindsey Buckingham was like, I don't want to work with you no more. I mean, you can't have that kind of crap going on in a small unit like a band.
At my job, there used to be like a rule where you like couldn't date within
Yeah.
that company, but people
do it.
went behind that, so we had to like take the rule.
Right, it's like drinking on the train. I mean, you can outlaw it, but then you have to enforce it. And enforcing it is almost tougher. And it used to be, that you could, like in the 50s, you couldn't be married and get a job if you were a woman, stuff like that. Like even if your husband worked there, especially if your husband worked there. But yeah, that's a rule that a lot of industries have. We'll talk about this more, and I'm going to show some office episodes. So we're going to have fun with organization. Because the next lecture we're going to talk about on Tuesday, we're going to talk about organization or corporate culture, what it is, how it sets the rules and behaviors of a company. And I don't think there's not many shows that display this in a more humorous and satirical way than The Office, the ridiculousness of the workplace. Michael always talks about the workplace as his family, because he doesn't have a family, so it's like a surrogate family for him. Anyway, but her husband Bill is a technician in the same plant. I guess it is. No, I guess it's the same plant, sorry. Linda and Bill share the care of her 16-year-old daughter from a previous marriage, so this is a blended family. Remember, like the Brady Bunch? And their 2-year-old, by working opposite shifts, so what do you think their love life is like if they work opposite shifts? One works from 3 p.m. to 11, the other works from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. What do you think's going on? Huh? Yeah, how long do you think that's going to happen? I mean, look, if someone goes, all right, we can get married but no sex. How many people do you think would get married? Would none be a good number? None? I mean, it's obviously not the only reason why people get married. One of the big attractions of marrying somebody is hopefully if they don't cheat on you, you don't have to wear a condom anymore. For a lot of men, that's a big draw. I assure you that's what Chris Humphries was thinking. Although, do you really trust that Kim Kardashian wasn't sleeping with 5 other people at the same time? Or supposedly, Chris came home and she was doing naked yoga on the floor one day or something with the yoga instructor. So anyway, but obviously you get married for love and romance, but sex is a big part of that, isn't it? So, and at the very minimum, intimacy. Like if you're not kissing somebody, hugging and cuddling, whatever it is, at least, talking to each other, there's a problem here. There's a big problem here. Bill works a 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift while I watch the baby. Linda explained that I work the 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift and he watches the baby. My older daughter works at Walgreens after school. When we first met in the factory's break room over a couple of Cokes, Linda was in blue jeans and a pink jersey. Her hair pulled back in a long blonde ponytail. She wore no makeup and her manner was purposeful and direct. These descriptions got to go there. This is not a novel, okay? And it's good descriptions, but you're not a novelist, okay? She was working overtime, so I began by asking whether Amerco required the overtime or whether she volunteered for it. So here it is. Here's the conflict. Did she volunteer for it? Which shows that where's her priority at if she volunteered for it? Yep, listen to this. Oh, I put in for it, she replied with a low chuckle. Mark these pages down. But I wondered out loud, wouldn't she and her husband like to have more time at home together? So she's saying, look, okay, maybe she did it for the money. So maybe she had more money, maybe they'd spend more time at home. Listen to this. But I wondered out loud, blah, blah, more time at home together, finances and company policy permitting. Linda took off her safety glasses, rubbed her whole face, folded her arms, resting her elbows on the table. You sure you're not going to tell me what the crinkle in her forehead to? And approaches. And some editor probably made her do this. Give me a description, make it personal, like a novel. She's like, really? Sounds stupid to me. Anyway, and approached the question by describing her life at home. Listen to this. Tell me if this doesn't sound worse than work, or better. I walk in the door, and the minute I turn the key in the lock, my older daughter is there. Granted, she needs somebody to talk to her about her day. The baby is still up. She should have been in bed 2 hours ago, and that upsets me. The dishes are piled in the sink. My daughter comes right up to the door and complains about anything her stepfather said or did, and she wants to talk about her job. My husband is in the other room hollering to my daughter, Tracy, I don't ever get any time to talk to your mother because you're always monopolizing her time before I even get a chance. They all come at me at once. To Linda, her home was not a place to relax. And I bet you, what do you think Linda and Bill, or do you think, well, Linda was married beforehand, so she'd have known better. Do you think Linda thought this was what marriage and family life was going to be like when she was 18? And she was fantasizing about having a husband and a family? What'd you think it was? Christmas morning where everybody's all together and happy, or her birthday where they go feed her breakfast in bed, or the kids picking up after themselves and changing their own diapers. Yeah. I bet she underestimated the expense, the hassle, the frustration. And again, what I am trying to do by criticizing family is trying to balance off all of the nonsense you get from society. That marriage is some kind of fairy tale fantasy land, and that family is wonderful, and nobody ever does anything wrong, and nobody ever abuses anybody, and that family is the right way to go for your life. The only thing I'm telling you guys to think about before you start a family or get married is think it through. Go talk to people who've been married for a long time. Go talk to people who've been married and divorced. Go talk to people who've never been married. And even though that actually being single is connected with a lower life expectancy, part of that has to do with some people are single because they're horrible people. And when you're horrible, you do bad things, and you get into situations where people shoot you, or you don't take care of yourself. Also, people who don't get married are very, very ugly people, who don't take care of their bodies or their face, and they look terrible. And therefore, when you have low self-esteem, you tend to have lots of stress. When you have lots of stress, what happens to your life expectancy? It goes down. So one of the things, and the reason why I go against that statistic is that people always use that as a reason why you should get married, that it's healthier to be married. And I'm telling you right now that it's probably healthier either not to be married or to be married permanently, but it is not healthy to get married, get divorced, get married, get divorced, get married, get divorced. Go talk to divorced people. Do they seem normal to you? Do they seem unstressed? Do they seem like they have no bitterness, that they just suddenly got over it? That it wasn't a major mistake, that it didn't harm their confidence, that it didn't set them back financially? And what's the percentage of marriages that end in divorce roughly in this country?
50,
Yeah, 45. No, about 45. Well, it's about 45%. So that's pretty ugly, isn't it? You know, let's say it's 55% success rate. What would that be if we translated that into grades? An F? So, and you know, even today, where people can more readily choose their partners, right? We've got the guesswork out of this. People choose who they're romantically involved with. And they can even have sex before they get married. Whereas before that, it used to be one of the things. You get married to this person, you'd be virgins or something, and it'd be real awkward, and it just wouldn't work right, or they didn't set you on fire, you know, and then all of a sudden you'd meet somebody at work and you'd look in their eyes and the sparkle would start going on and all this other stuff, right? Now, part of people getting divorced has been actually attached to the rise in vanity and the materialism that that romance is real good at first, and then when the shine wears off the apple, people will start going, "Ugh, this is who I married?" And you start, maybe your husband or wife gain a few pounds, or maybe they just stop working out, or maybe they stop doing their hair, and too many times you walk in the bathroom after they went in there, and too many times you've seen them wake up on Sunday morning with that crusty junk in their eye, and with their hair sticking straight up, and other sounds coming out of their body, and when they're mad or when they're depressed. And then you meet this guy at work, and he's not anything like that. And he smells good, and he looks good. You go on this first date, and wow, it's just like when I first met my husband. And then you marry that fool. And then 6 years later, that fool starts to look like the other fool you just divorced. I'm serious, this happens to people. Why do you think after about 6 to 7 years, people start to get divorced? That's about, it seems, how long it takes before people start getting sick of each other.
Isn't that why you're supposed to, like, date, like...
It's probably a good idea.
Like
it's probably not only a good idea, although a lot of people are doing this now, to cohabitate. That way you leave, there's no prenup, there's no marital dispute, hopefully there's no kids involved, and you go your separate ways. That's why a lot of Hollywood stars, why bother if you're worth $500 million to get married? Especially as a celebrity. Celebrities have this additional thing, which Ronald Reagan called first lady-itis, or leading lady-itis, where he said that leading ladies and leading men will fall in love with each other in movies. Like, where did Brad meet Angelina? It was on the set of that stupid movie. And this happens to a lot of celebrities. They think they're in love because they're playing this intense role. Now, this relationship's actually lasted longer. Did Angelina and Billy Bob do a movie together before they got married?
Yeah.
Did they? See, again, I mean, that... And you can bet that Brad or Angelina are going to go on a movie set someday, and they're going to fall in love with somebody. Seriously. That's why I would encourage them to do movies together, because then it's less likely to happen. Okay? But a similar thing happens with regular people too. This stuff happens with anybody ever moved in with a friend, and then all of a sudden, I mean, this isn't just romance. Anybody ever moved in with a friend, and all of a sudden, really bad things started to come up to the surface. Maybe they didn't like to wash the dishes, maybe they left the bathroom a mess, maybe they stole your food without asking, maybe they invited people over at 3 o'clock in the morning and kept you up. This stuff happens. You know, moving in can ruin, I'll tell you right now, getting married can ruin friendships. That's for certain. And then when you throw kids into the mix, does that tend to make the situation better or worse? Or at least more complicated, right? Because now it's, who's going to change the diapers? Who's going to get them out of bed? I told you. Supposedly, and Brad Pitt got roundly criticized for this in an interview recently, he said he gets his kids up by giving them a can of Coke. Going, drink it, drink it, drink it, drink it. He said that this is what he does. Like, goes and gets him a can of Coke, and he's like, drink it, drink it, drink this fast, drink this Coke. Child Protective Services wants to talk to him. Okay. Is that normal behavior? I mean, if you heard, maybe it wouldn't be enough to get your kids taken away, but I don't think that Child Protective Services would look very kindly upon the fact that you're jacking your kids up with caffeine and sugar first thing in the morning and yelling at them and being manic. I mean, what are kids going to learn about sugary snacks? So anyway, Brad can do whatever he wants, though, I guess. Anyway, going back to her description, to Linda, her home was not a place to relax, it was another workplace. Her description of the urgency of demands and the unarbitrated quarrels that awaited her homecoming contrasted with her account of arriving at her job as a shift supervisor. This is very crucial because I'm going to ask you to compare this work as home and home as work. So on the bottom here on page 37, here's her description of work. I usually come to work early just to get away from the house. Now, this book was put out about 14 years ago. Do you think that Linda Avery's 16-year-old kid has potentially read this book? Do you think she read what her mom said right there? This is what... And look, is it wrong not to admit this to your kids? That they drive you nuts and you'd rather be at work? Should you tell your kids that? I mean, some people might even consider that a form of abuse, right?
I think we did it subtly. Maybe we can get away with it, but...
Maybe say something like, kids, this is why I would rather go to work, right? When they're arguing or throwing stuff. But even that is like, you're attacking their self-esteem potentially or something?
I'll tell you the truth. My mom has said that before. She'll throw her arms in the air and be like, I wish I was at work right now.
And she says it as an insult too, right?
Yeah, I'm just like, yeah, I don't blame you. Like, what do you say to that, though?
So listen to her description here. I usually come in to work early just to get away from the house. I get there by 2:30 and people are there waiting. Not screaming at her, not asking her for questions. We sit, we talk, we joke. Does that sound like a family? At the breakfast table? Bobby, quit bothering. Quit putting stuff in Lisa's hair. Okay? Look, you kids are going to miss the bus. Did you pack your lunch yet? Oh my God, you got that jacket on inside out. Come over here. Right? And moms especially like to lick their finger and put it on people's faces. You ever seen this one? You got something on your forehead. So don't lick your finger. I guess you came out of her body. I guess you can't contaminate you. Anyway. We joke. I let them know what's going on, who is to be where, what changes I've made for the shift that day. We're sitting there. We sit there and chit-chat for 5 or 10 minutes. There's laughing, joking, fun. There's none of this, Mom, I need this, Mom, I want this, Mom, Bobby did this, Mom, I wear my shoes over my coat. Help me with my homework. Some girl at school said something about me. Or worse, I hate you, Mom. Why don't you ever let me use the car? Right? Let's fast forward it to teenagers. Yeah, they're fun to deal with, aren't they? And some of you are not. Some of you are still teenagers, technically, although you're adult teenagers. That's what I love. A teenage years extend into adulthood. 18 and 19 you're an adult at that point in time. That's why if you're a man, that's why they make you sign that thing that says, oh, if there's ever World War III, we're going to come snatch you away and take you off to a foreign country somewhere. It won't be North Korea, it looks like. Did you see North Korea gave up their weapons? Or at least it looks like it. Did you know what they gave up their nuclear weapons for? Just to tell you how poor they are. For food. For food! Not even money, which you can use to buy food. They just wanted food. Probably because the act of having to go exchange the money for the food was too long. 20,000 people might have starved exchanging the money for food. I heard it was so bad in North Korea they were eating human beings. Right, some dissidents snuck back into the country and took video. I hope they're making that up. Anyway, my coworkers aren't putting me down for any reason. Everything is done with humor and fun from beginning to end, though it can get stressful when a machine malfunctions. For Linda, home had become work and work had become home. Somehow the two worlds had been reversed. Indeed, Linda felt she could only get relief from the work of being at home by going to the home of work, as she explained. My husband's a great help watching the baby. Listen to how he falls down with housework. But as far as doing housework, or even taking the baby when I'm not home, especially changing diapers, he figures he works 5 days a week. He's not going to come home and clean. And is cleaning manly? Is that a manly thing to do? To get a little dust thing and dust stuff and vacuum and then get down on your hands and knees and scrub the toilet, and so that's real manly, isn't it, right? No, but he might mow the lawn, right, or take the trash out or clean the gutters. But there is a genderized aspect to housework, isn't there? Washing dishes is what gender? What about waxing the floors? Man. Huh?
I think it's female.
Man?
It could go either way.
Could be either way.
Yeah.
How about fixing the basement stairs? Right? Taking out the trash. Right? Fixing the car. How about taking the kids to their music lessons? That could be either, though, nowadays, right? But still, I think most people would agree, even at your households, isn't there a bit of inequity between male and female work? And maybe some of your families it's worse or other. Is there anybody who in a family where your dad does most of the housework? Really? Does he cook too?
But he's like obsessed with cleaning.
Oh, so he's like one of these neat freaks.
Yeah.
Is he a germaphobe too?
No, but like if Yeah, like he'll clean the dishes.
So if the carpet's out, he'll get down on the ground and start.
Yeah,
like a throw rug, he'll like.
He doesn't like us to clean the dishes because he cleans up. Like,
Does he pick fuzz and paper off the floor? I got a friend that does that.
He'll pick like everything up. He vacuums every day.
But he doesn't clean. I mean, cook. He doesn't cook.
He cooks sometimes.
Okay.
He's retired now. So.
Oh, okay. So that might be a little more. But was he like that when you were younger?
Yeah.
Does your mom like that? That's probably why she married me. Or one of the reasons. It's like you're attractive, you're nice, and you clean the house? She's probably worried that some other woman's going to come along and try to steal him away. Anyway. My husband, why should I have to come home and do the housework without help from anybody? My husband and I have been through this over and over again. Even if he would just pick up from the kitchen table and stack the dishes for me, that would make a big difference. How long does that take? 5 seconds? And I'll tell you right now, with electronic dishwashers, how hard is it to wash dishes for a lot of people? All you got to do is put the damn thing in the machine, and you can do them when you're done. When you're done with the cereal bowl, you rinse the damn thing out. And frankly, I'll tell you what: if you just eat cereal, rinse it out, wipe it off, and put it back in the cabinet. What do you think's on there? Use a little soap if you have to. But on a real level, how long does it take to do this? And people still won't do that. Now, cleaning greasy dishes is if you bake something, that's always a pain. But I'll tell you what, if you let a casserole dish sit, what's going to happen to the dirt on it? Gets caked in, and you have to go get a metal Brillo pad and scrape the hell out of it, and that's like that's a good bicep workout. So I'm telling you right now, good for your triceps too. On his weekends off, I have to provide a sitter for the baby so he can go fishing. When I have a day off, I have the baby all day long without a break. He'll help out if I'm not there, but the minute I am, all the work at home is mine. With a light laugh, she continued, so I take a lot of overtime. And she's trying to get away not only from her family, who's she really trying to get away from? Yeah, her husband, or at least trying to force him to do work by not being there. The more I get out of the house, the better I am. It's a terrible thing to say. But that's the way I feel. You got to be honest, Linda. Okay? And I'll tell you what, is the problem going to get any better if she keeps hiding this from her husband or her family? She needs to be honest. Like, sometimes you got to say stuff to confront people with stuff, right? If your friend keeps doing something out in public that drives you crazy, you know, sometimes you got to sit your friends down and be like, look, look, look. It's almost like an intervention. Like, look, we can't have you acting like this at parties, right? Seriously, I mean, I'm sure that most of you have had to do this. Maybe some of you are the people who your friends sat down and said this stuff to. Don't just want to get away. Don't you just want to get away sometimes, but in a matter of fact way. This was the way life was. Bill, who was 56 when I first met him, had 3 grown children from a contentious first marriage. He told me he felt he had already put in his time to raise them, and now was at a stage of his life in which he wanted to enjoy himself. So Bill's pretty clear. Kids mean lack of enjoyment. That's what it means to him. Yet when he came home afternoons, he had to babysit for Linda. So now this idea is like babysitting your own children. It's like part of this element. All right. So again, I'll send you this article. We're running a little low on time, and I have one area else I want to read from the book. But basically, it's sort of this idea. Look, who's winning this conflict over time? The need for money or money itself? You know. It really is the idea of a material needs. The material needs are limited, and therefore you have to go to work to get them. Number 3, energy and emotion. Those are somewhat separate things, but they're also intimately related, and then loyalty and duty. And if you actually look at it down on this website, it says that 60-some% of the people in this study, only 3% of those surveys blame both work and family for conflict between the two. 64% of those surveyed blame work, not family. Although I think part of that might be, do you want to blame your family for your work issues? I mean, it really is quite natural to blame work, because it's like, look, they don't make songs that say, take this job and love it. It's take this job and shove it. And they made a movie called Horrible Bosses, where the plot of the movie was that these people wanted to kill their bosses. Anybody ever seen 9 to 5? One of the plot, they fantasize about killing their boss. Okay? That's not a good thing. You don't see movies called Horrible Parents, where kids try to kill their parents. You know why they don't do that kind of stuff?
Because kids might watch it.
Yeah, because people really take that stuff seriously. But people kill bosses. No, I mean, let's not be foolish about this. People go into work and they kill coworkers and bosses. So, although, maybe it's because of security at work. People are more likely to kill their family and friends than they are their bosses. Maybe they should be taking it out on them or something like that. All right. So let's move to page, let me see here. I'll go over this next time when it talks about the family-friendly policies at Amerco itself. Let's talk a little more about statistics instead of specific examples. So what she gave you there was what we call anecdotal data. She's interviewing, it actually was more than anecdotal data, but the way she was presenting it was an anecdotal way. But she was interviewing Linda, right? And she was asking her about all these questions. And she was trying to, that's qualitative research. Here are more statistics on the conditions of the workplace and family. So on page 27, it says here, it talks about the imposition of family-friendly policies. And if you actually look at the very top here, it says, by 1993, virtually everyone I spoke to at Amerco told me they were working longer hours than they had only a few years earlier, and most agreed that Amerco was a pretty workaholic place. Amerco is not alone. So this is not. This is on page 27. So this is not just only Amerco that's doing this, and as you saw from the air traffic controllers, it's not just companies either. It's governments. A 1990 study of 188 Fortune 500 manufacturing firms found that while 88% of them informally offered part-time work for family issues, only 3 to 5% of their employees made use of it. Why do you think people were reticent about taking time off? What impression did that give to their bosses? Even if they wanted to. You're not a team player, and you're not going to get the promotion and a whole bunch of other stuff. And promotion is tied to money, right? And status. 6% of the companies surveyed formally offered job sharing, but only 1% or less of their employees took advantage of that. 45% of these companies officially offered flex time, and these are all family-friendly policies, but only 10% of their employees used it. 3% of the companies offered flex place, work at home, and less than 3% of their employees took advantage of it. You can bet that number is a lot higher now with the internet. As Amerco's experience would suggest, American working parents seem to be putting in longer and longer hours. Of workers with children aged 12 and under, I think I read part of this the other day, only 4% of men and 13% of women work less than 40 hours a week. According to a study by Arthur Emlyn at Portland State University, whether or not a worker has a child makes remarkably little difference to his or her attendance record at work. Excluding vacation and holidays, the average employee misses 9 days of work a year. The average parent of a child who is left home alone on weekdays misses 14.5 days a year. Only 5.5 days more. Fathers with young children only miss half a day more a year than fathers without children. So you see there with gender especially, this has become an issue. Women are much more expected to take time off. Men are not. But there are still ramifications for women because they're less likely to be hired up in higher positions, hired initially at higher positions, because they're perceived as, they're eventually, especially if they're below 30 years of age and they have no kids, they are expected, because 90-some% of American women have, or I don't know if it's 90, but a high percentage, about 80% of American women have kids. Okay. The idea of more time for family life seems to have died, gone to heaven and become an angel of an idea, but why? Why don't working parents and others too take the opportunity available to them to reduce their work hours? And it's there at the bottom is a little note on the Family and Medical Leave Act that was signed in 1993. The most widely accepted explanation is that working parents simply cannot afford to work shorter hours. Is that what Linda revealed, though? It's actually something even more, pernicious and complicated and intersected than that. With the median income of U.S. households in 1996 at $32,264, it is true that many workers could not pay their rent and food bills on 3/4 or half of their salaries. I would say, then why are you having kids if you can't even afford your own rent? But notwithstanding the financial and time pressures most parents face, why do the majority not even take all the paid vacation days due to them? Even more puzzling, why are the best paid employees, upper-level managers, and professionals among the least interested in part-time work or job sharing? In one Amerco survey, only 1/3 of top-level female employees who belong to what is called the A payroll thought part-time was of great value. The percentage of women favoring part-time rose as pay levels went down. 45% of B payroll, lower level managers and professionals, and administrative women who provide clerical support thought part-time was of great value. Thus, those who earned more money were less interested in part-time work than those who earned less. Few men at any level expressed interest in part-time work. Now, down at the bottom, the last thing I'll mention. In a 1995 national study, 48% of American working women and 61% of men claimed they would still want to work even if they had enough money to live as comfortably as you would like. Doesn't that say it right there? With the denial going on here? The lies going on out in public that family is number one? It clearly is not. It might not even be number two. Number two might be people's leisure time and friends. When asked what was very important to their decision to take their current job, only 35% of respondents in one national survey said salary or wage, whereas 55% mentioned gaining new skills as very important, 60% mentioned effect on personal family life. Money matters, of course, but other things do too. Okay? All right, we'll stop it there, and we'll continue.